The first sign that the world is ending is not a scream. It is a man at the grain docks who cannot lift his own hands. He has carried sacks of Egyptian wheat since before sunrise, back bent under rough cloth, bare feet slipping on damp boards, lungs full of harbor fog and the sour smell of wet rope. Around him, Constantinople is awake and hungry. Carts groan over stone streets. Sailors shout from the decks. Bakers wait for flour. Priests move through the morning light with their robes gathered above the mud. The city still believes it is alive because everything is still moving. That is the mercy of the first day. No one understands yet. No one sees the flea in the straw. No one notices the rats moving between the stacked sacks, small shadows in a world too busy to look down. The man thinks he is tired. That is all. He tells himself the ache in his legs comes from the weight of the grain, that the heat behind his eyes is only the noon sun pressing down on the harbor stones, that the chill under his tunic will pass once he eats. But by afternoon, he is sitting against a wall, breathing as if the air has become heavier. His skin is hot. His mouth is dry. His fingers tremble when he reaches for water. A friend laughs nervously and tells him to go home before the overseer sees him useless. So he walks through the city, one hand against the wall, past stalls of fish and oil and bread, past children chasing each other between doorways, past women bargaining over onions, past a church where candles burn in the dimness. Nothing looks like disaster. That is what makes it worse. The street does not split open. The sky does not turn black. The emperor does not know his name. History does not pause to announce itself. It enters quietly, inside one ordinary body, on one ordinary day, in a city that still smells of smoke, grain, sweat, seawater, and warm bread. By evening, he is lying on a mat in a crowded room. The air is thick from the small cooking fire. The blanket under him scratches his skin. Someone brings a cup of water. Someone else touches his forehead and pulls their hand back. Outside, the city is settling into night. Doors close. Lamps flicker. The harbor creaks in the dark. A rat moves behind a clay jar and disappears into the wall. Tomorrow, the man will not go back to the docks. The day after, another worker will fail to rise. Then a baker. Then a porter. Then a child in a room 3 streets away. But tonight, no one calls it a plague. They call it fever. They call it bad air. They call it punishment. They call it anything that makes the fear small enough to speak aloud. By sunrise, Constantinople is still pretending to be normal. The city has always known how to swallow suffering and keep moving. It has survived bad harvests, tax collectors, rumors from the frontier, ships that never came back, and winters when the wind off the Bosporus cut through wool as if cloth were nothing. So when one dockworker fails to return, the harbor does not stop. Another man takes his place. Another shoulder bends under the grain sack. Another pair of hands pulls the rope. The mills still need wheat. The ovens still need flour. The people still need bread. That is the cruel thing about a city. It cannot pause just because one room has gone quiet. From the water, Constantinople looks almost untouchable, a crown of walls, domes, warehouses, churches, and crowded roofs rising above the sea. Inside, it is not a symbol. It is a living machine. Thousands of people wake because thousands of other people have already worked before them. A baker depends on the miller. The miller depends on the porter. The porter depends on the ship. The ship depends on the harbor clerk, the rope maker, the carpenter, the guard at the gate, the farmer far away in Egypt, and the men who load grain under a sun that feels too bright on fevered skin. Every loaf of bread is a chain of human bodies. Every cup of watered wine, every bowl of lentils, every lamp filled with oil has passed through hands that may already be trembling. In the market, women still argue over price. Children still run too close to cartwheels. A priest blesses a sick old man near a doorway and moves on. No one wants to seem afraid too early. Fear has a cost. If you close your stall, you do not eat. If you refuse to carry goods, someone else gets the work. If you stay inside, your children ask why the bread is gone. So people do what people have always done at the edge of disaster. They bargain. They sweep. They pray. They tell themselves it is only a fever moving through the poorer streets, only bad air near the water, only the kind of sickness that comes when too many strangers crowd into one city. But the city is built for contact. Narrow lanes press shoulder against shoulder. Families sleep in rooms where breath has nowhere to go. Straw mats hold warmth, dust, insects, and the memory of every person who lay there before. Grain stores shelter rats from weather and hunger. Ships bring not only food, but the small hidden lives that travel with food. Nothing about this requires mystery. Nothing needs to look supernatural. The danger moves because ordinary life moves. A man buys bread. A woman carries water. A child touches a doorpost. A porter sleeps in a warehouse because he is too tired to walk home. By evening, more lamps burn behind closed shutters than usual. Voices are lower. The first household that lost a man does not open its door. Across the lane, someone listens to the silence and decides not to ask. The strange truth is that this was not a dead world. It was wounded, uncertain, and poorer than the old Roman age, but it was not empty. People still married, planted, traded, argued, cooked, prayed, repaired roofs, counted coins, and worried about tomorrow. In the West, the old empire had fallen apart piece by piece. Cities that once held baths, offices, theaters, and busy streets had shrunk behind patched walls. Roads still crossed the land, but weeds grew between their stones. Villas stood with broken tiles and cold rooms where painted walls had faded in the damp. In places where Roman officials once collected taxes and sent reports across hundreds of miles, local rulers now held power with smaller courts, smaller armies, and smaller dreams. But in the East, Rome had not vanished. It had changed its language, shifted its center, and wrapped itself around Constantinople, the great city between Europe and Asia. From there, Emperor Justinian believed the world could still be put back together. His lawyers gathered laws. His builders raised churches. His officers counted grain, men, land, ships, and taxes. His armies moved across the Mediterranean, trying to reclaim pieces of the old world. To the people in the capital, this mattered and did not matter. The emperor lived above them like weather. His decisions shaped the price of bread, the movement of soldiers, the taxes on trade, and the prayers spoken in public, but most people did not wake thinking about empire. They woke thinking about water, work, debt, food, and whether the cough in the next room would pass by morning. The family of the dockworker knows this better than anyone now. His wife has not slept. The room is too warm near the fire and too cold near the door. Their child sits wrapped in a rough blanket, watching adults whisper in the half-dark. The cup beside the mat is empty again. The sick man asks for water, then forgets he has asked. Outside, the lane smells of smoke, damp stone, stale straw, and yesterday's cooking. A neighbor leaves a small piece of bread near the threshold, but does not step inside. That is kindness now, measured in distance. And while this one household contracts into fear, the empire continues to speak in large words. Restoration, law, victory, faith, order. Those words are not false. They are just too clean for the room where a woman is rinsing a cloth in cold water with shaking hands. This is the crack between history as it is written and history as it is lived. On parchment, the 6th century is emperors, generals, bishops, councils, campaigns, and laws. On the floor of this room, it is sweat cooling on skin, a child trying not to cry, a door nobody wants to open, and the terrible thought that the world outside may already be carrying the same sickness home. The path of the sickness is not a legend. It is not a curse riding on the wind in a shape people can see. It is smaller, quieter, and far more patient. It begins in places ordinary people rarely fear until it is too late. A grain hold below deck, a rope-dark warehouse, a corner behind stacked sacks where rats nest because the city has given them food, shelter, and darkness. A ship that reaches. Constantinople does not arrive alone. It brings wheat from Egypt, jars of oil, folded cloth, letters sealed with wax, sailors with cracked hands, merchants with careful smiles, and hidden passengers no clerk writes down. In the stale warmth of the hold, straw shifts. Tiny feet move through spilled grain. Fleas cling to fur, leap to cloth, wait in seams, vanish into bedding, and travel farther than any one person could imagine. No one at the harbor thinks this way. A dockworker sees cargo. A guard sees taxes. A baker sees flour. A hungry family sees tomorrow morning's bread. That is why the disease has a road. Not because people are foolish, but because they are alive. Life itself is movement. Grain must be carried. Bread must be baked. Water must be fetched. Lamps must be filled. Children must be fed. A city of hundreds of thousands cannot simply hold its breath. So the hidden thing rides inside the habits that keep people from starving. It passes from ship to warehouse, from warehouse to cart, from cart to market, from market to home. It moves through cloth, straw, dust, skin, and breath, through everything too common to be suspected. By the fourth morning, the dockworker's wife hears that 2 more men from the harbor have taken to their beds. One worked near the grain scales. One slept in a corner of the warehouse because his family lived too far beyond the walls. She listens without looking at the neighbor who tells her. Her own room has changed. The same clay jar sits by the wall. The same mat lies near the fire. The same wooden bowl rests on the floor. But nothing is innocent now. The blanket may carry danger. The cup may carry danger. The air itself feels crowded. Even kindness has become complicated. To bring water is to step closer. To step closer is to wonder what has already touched your hands. Outside, the city still sounds alive, but the sound has thinned. Fewer wheels on the stones. Fewer voices in the lane. More shutters closed before sunset. And somewhere near the harbor, another sack of grain is opened. Another rat slips into shadow. And another family prepares its evening meal without knowing that history has already crossed their threshold. By the 5th day, the house no longer feels like shelter. It feels like a small wooden box holding too much breath. The dockworker lies near the fire because warmth is the only comfort left, but the fire makes the room smoky, and the smoke turns every inhale into work. His wife keeps the door partly shut to keep out the eyes of the lane and partly open to let in air. Neither choice feels safe. The child sits near the wall with knees pulled to the chest, quiet in the way children become quiet when they understand that adults are frightened. There is still bread, but not much. A heel of yesterday's loaf rests on a cloth beside a bowl of thin lentils, and each person notices it without saying so. Hunger has not arrived like a dramatic enemy. It has simply begun to count. 1 piece for morning, a smaller piece for evening. Water stretched farther than it should be. Oil saved for 1 more lamp. Outside, the market is still open, but going there now means walking through streets where every face has become a question. Who has fever? Who has touched a sickbed? Who is hiding someone inside? The wife waits until the light is high, wraps a shawl around her hair, and steps into the lane with a clay jug and a few coins. The city she enters is the same city and not the same city. The stones are still warm under the sun. The smell of fish still rises from the stalls. A donkey still pulls a cart past the corner. But there are gaps where noise should be. A baker's doorway is closed. A water seller is missing from his usual place. 2 women stop speaking when she comes near. Near the church, more candles burn than usual, their small flames trembling in the dim air. People pray with the concentration of those trying to bargain with something they cannot see. She buys less than she hoped. Prices have started to climb because flour is not just flour anymore. It is labor, transport, courage, and luck. Someone had to unload it. Someone had to grind it. Someone had to bring it through streets where sickness is moving from room to room. When she returns home, she washes her hands in a little cold water and feels foolish for using so much of it. Then she feels ashamed for feeling foolish. The sick man asks who is at the door, though no one is there. His eyes follow shapes only he can see. His wife sits beside him but does not touch him at first. That hesitation is the wound the plague makes before death. It teaches love to pause. Then she takes the cloth, wets it again, and places it on his forehead because fear may change the room, but it has not yet changed who she is. By the end of the first week, the city begins to lose its rhythm. Not all at once. A place as large as Constantinople does not collapse like a broken chair. It slows like a body with fever. The morning carts come later. The calls of sellers grow shorter. The line at the well becomes quieter because people no longer want to stand too close together, but they still need water, so they stand there anyway, looking at the ground, holding their jars, listening for coughs. The baker whose door was closed yesterday has not reopened. His oven is cold, and that matters more than anyone wants to admit. A city can pray without one priest. It can trade without one merchant. But when ovens go cold, fear changes shape. It becomes something you can hold in your hand. A smaller loaf, a higher price, an empty shelf, a child asking why supper is thinner. At the harbor, the overseers shout more than before, not because shouting helps, but because order feels like something that can be forced back into place if the voice is loud enough. Men avoid sleeping in the warehouses now, but some still do, because a corner under a roof is better than the street. Guards remain at the gates with spears in hand, yet even they shift away from travelers who look unwell. Clerks try to keep records, but names arrive faster than ink can dry. In the dockworkers' lane, doors stay closed through daylight. No one hangs laundry across the passage. No children chase each other around the corner. The wife steps outside and notices how strange silence can be when it belongs to a place that used to argue with itself from sunrise to dark. Her husband is weaker now. He drifts in and out of sleep, sometimes asking about the grain scales, sometimes about a payment he never collected, sometimes about his mother as if he were a boy again. She answers each question as if it makes sense. That is another kind of labor, the work of keeping a person tied to the room when fever keeps pulling him somewhere else. Beyond their door, the city is discovering that sickness does not only take bodies from beds. It takes hands from work. It takes voices from markets. It takes trust from neighbors. It takes confidence from rulers who thought walls, laws, and soldiers could protect a capital from every enemy that mattered. The great machine still moves, but its gears are slipping. A mill waits for workers. A cart waits for a driver. A church waits for enough space to hold the frightened. A family waits for someone brave enough to knock. And under all of it runs the same quiet truth. No one knows which ordinary task will bring the sickness next, but everyone still has to perform ordinary tasks to survive. By the second week, people begin searching for reasons. They do not have microscopes. They do not have germ theory. They do not have a way to look at a flea and understand that something too small for the eye can overturn an empire. What they have is faith, memory, rumor, and fear. So they use those tools because those are the tools their world has given them. In the churches, the air grows thick with candle smoke and whispered prayers. People stand shoulder to shoulder even as they fear the warmth of another body beside them. Some ask what sin has brought this. Some ask which saint might intercede. Some remember the strange dim years after the sun seemed weaker and wonder whether the sky itself has been warning them all along. Outside the church doors, explanations multiply. Bad air from the harbor, spoiled grain, foreign sailors, divine anger, an unlucky house, a cursed street, a season out of balance. None of these answers can stop the sickness, but they give shape to dread, and shape matters when terror is too large to hold in the mind. In the dockworker's room, his wife listens to these rumors through the wall and through the mouths of neighbors who now speak from several feet away. One woman tells her to burn certain herbs. Another tells her to keep a lamp near the doorway. A man says the sick should be kept apart, then steps back as if his own words have frightened him. The wife thanks them all because rejecting advice feels dangerous when every piece of advice is really a small offering of hope. She does what she can. She cleans the bowl. She changes the cloth. She opens the door when the smoke grows too heavy and closes it when strangers pass too close. She prays, not because prayer makes her foolish, but because prayer is the only language she has for sitting beside someone she may not be able to save. This is where modern people must be careful. It is easy to look backward and feel superior. Easy to say they should have known. Easy to confuse ignorance with stupidity. But these people are not stupid. They are trapped inside the limits of their century. They know patterns, even if they cannot name causes. They know sickness can cluster in houses. They know bad smells often mean danger. They know crowds can feel unsafe, even if hunger keeps pulling them back into crowds. They know fear can spread faster than footsteps. And still, they keep going. The child needs food. The lamp needs oil. The sick need water. The dead need prayers. The living need reasons. By night, the church bells sound different. They no longer divide the day into clean pieces. They seem to count uncertainty itself, each note moving over roofs, closed doors, empty stalls, and rooms where families sit awake, waiting for morning without trusting it to come gently. By the third week, the dream of a restored Rome begins to feel fragile even inside the capital that was supposed to prove it still lived. On clear mornings, the imperial buildings still catch the light. Officials still walk with tablets and sealed orders. Guards still stand at important doors. Priests still chant beneath painted ceilings. From a distance, the empire looks organized, almost untouched. That is the illusion power creates. It makes people believe that stone walls, written laws, gold coins, and armed men can hold the world in place. But a plague does not argue with walls. It does not respect offices. It does not read decrees. It enters through the soft parts of civilization: food, breath, bedding, work, and care. Justinian can command armies across the sea, but he cannot command a fever to leave a room. He can send men to count taxes, but he cannot make absent workers return to the mills. He can dream of ancient Rome made whole again, but the city under his windows is learning that an empire is not only its emperor. It is also the baker waking before dawn, the sailor tying rope with cracked hands, the woman carrying water through a crowded lane, the clerk who can still hold a pen, the child who brings oil for a lamp, the priest whose voice has not failed yet, and the neighbor brave enough to leave bread at a door. When those small lives falter, the great words falter with them. Restoration becomes difficult when carts stand idle. Order becomes thin when people avoid the market. Victory becomes distant when soldiers, merchants, porters, and messengers all share the same vulnerable body. In the dockworker's house, the wife does not think of imperial policy. She thinks of the last coins hidden beneath a cloth, the water jar that empties too quickly, the child sleeping badly in the corner, and the sound of her husband's breathing in the dark. Yet her room is connected to everything. The grain he carried was part of a system that fed the capital. The harbor where he worked was part of the empire's strength. The sickness that found him traveled along the same routes that made Constantinople powerful. This is the cruel turn. The roads, ships, warehouses, and markets that tied the world together also gave fear a map. Rome had once feared enemies at the frontier, riders beyond the river, armies beyond the mountains, fleets on the horizon. But this enemy arrived without banners, without drums, without a face to hate. It came wrapped in ordinary life. By night, the city still stands, but standing is not the same as being safe. The walls are there. The churches are there. The palace is there. And inside thousands of rooms, people are learning that the strongest empire on earth can still be brought low by something no one can see. By the end of the month, the city has learned to speak in absences. The empty place at the grain scale, the shutter that does not open, the oven that stays cold, the mat rolled against the wall because no one can bear to leave it where it was. The dockworker's wife moves through her room slowly now, as if quick movements might break what remains. Her husband is gone, but the room still holds him in small, stubborn ways. The worn place where his hand rested against the floor, the cup he kept asking for, the smell of smoke caught in his tunic, the memory of his voice naming ordinary things as if ordinary things could keep him anchored. Their child watches her fold the blanket. Neither of them says much. Words feel too large or too small, and there is no middle size for grief. Outside, Constantinople continues, because cities continue even when people inside them cannot understand how. Bread is still baked somewhere. Water is still carried. Bells still ring. Ships still press against the docks with ropes creaking in the wind. Officials still send orders. Priests still lift their voices until the sound wears thin. But nothing is the same as before. Every task now carries a shadow. Every stranger might be a warning. Every cough in a lane makes heads turn. The living have become careful with one another, not because they love less, but because survival has taught their bodies caution. This is how a catastrophe becomes history. Later, people will count it in millions. They will argue over numbers, routes, years, causes, and consequences. They will write about empire, trade, climate, war, and the weakening of Justinian's great ambition. They will ask whether Rome could have risen again if the sickness had not passed through its ports and homes. But the people who lived through it did not experience a number. They experienced a missing voice at breakfast, a smaller piece of bread, a neighbor speaking from across the lane, a church too full of candles, a child learning that adults can be afraid and still keep working. They did not know they were standing inside one of the great turning points of the 6th century. They only knew the world had become thinner. Fewer hands at the docks. Fewer feet in the market. Fewer songs in the evening. And yet, even here, life did not disappear. Someone swept a floor. Someone mended a sleeve. Someone carried water to a door. Someone whispered a prayer over a bed. Someone shared bread when there was barely enough. That is what survives beneath the ruins of every age. Not glory, not certainty, Not the clean story empires tell about themselves, but human beings continuing, one small act at a time, while history moves through the room like smoke.